Hello, my name is Kevin Loftus. I am one of the directors at ACT. We're a social enterprise of architects, urban designers, and policy specialists. And today I will present to you the second workshop of the Blessington Urban Plan. So, as you can see here, there was an in-person presentation given on the 2nd of October. This is now a recording for the online version of that, where we'll have an accompanying survey. The project itself is broken down into a number of different steps. So the design process is what we call co-design, where we're engaging with the public at each step of the way. The first engagement we had was on the 12th of August, where we were trying to understand the square. So we had various participants giving us their understanding of what was working, what was not working, what would need to be added to make the square a more vibrant place and a better anchor for bringing people and holding people in the town. The second workshop, which was the one we have just given in person, is where we took the ideas and feedback from the first one. We translated that into a number of design options, and then we presented that back to the participants, who were able to give us feedback on what was working within the project and also what was not working within the project proposals. So again, we're going to take that feedback, we're going to try and incorporate that into another round of designs before the third workshop, which is the end of October, where we're hoping to get a more refined design, more specific feedback on that. And then that will be taken away and brought forward to the final sort of project delivery by the end of the year. So as said, we have done the first, we're now into the second, so sort of halfway through the overall process. Looking at the context here, we have the square itself, or the public realm area within the centre of town. We know the town is within a close proximity to areas of natural beauty. We have the Wicklow Mountain National Park, we have the Blessington, or we have the Bullafuca Reservoir beside the town. We looked at the history of the town, Blessington House, the main access from that house to the church from the sort of mid to late 1600s, where the town really developed from that relationship of buildings. The church at St. Mary's, the Downshire Abbey House, our Downshire House. We also had a Downshire Monument, the Blessington Market House. So key important buildings and pieces of infrastructure, the railway that would have gone from Blessington to Dublin, for example. And from that looked at the footprint of the town. This is from the early 1800s. We can see that axial relationship between Blessington House, St. Mary's Church, and Knock Kieran Cottage on the other side of what was the river at that point. And then within the maps, you can see the pink dotted area being the sort of historic town footprint, and the black outline reflecting more what it looks like today. So jumping forward to 1995, you can see that the town has grown quite a bit. Additional housing estates, the reservoir obviously in place at this point. And from that moment, we've seen quite a lot of development and growth. So from the early 2000s through to more or less the present day, where we've also had development on the park and proposed future developments, all aiming to make Blessington, I suppose, a more vibrant place and a more livable place for a growing community. We can see the local area plan that designates key sites on the periphery for future development. And again, that axial relationship showing the importance really of that urban centre of Blessington as a key focal point. Within the demographics, we've compared Blessington to Ireland in general, and what we find is that it tends to have a younger population overall, so particularly in the 0 to 14 age bracket, 24% compared to the national average of 20%. And then looking at the population growth from around 2002 to the present day, there's been a rapid increase in the population, so over a doubling within that time, and that is planned to increase further over the next number of years. So this idea, I suppose, in general that we see across Ireland, where we're having to respond to an increased population, reflected very much in Blessington as well. Looking at the urban analysis and mobility, we see the N81 is going through the town and is just bordering the edge of the site. There is the Blessington Inner Relief Road, which is partially completed, with connecting roads in towards the N81, and plans to create future connections there to sort of create orbital routes around the town, as well as a wider N81 improvement scheme, and also roads within the local area plan. We've mapped the key public transport routes through Blessington, and we've looked at the town centre in more detail. So what it is currently versus what it's planned to be. Also looking at the local area plan, where areas have been designated for infill development. So the idea that this space will get denser is quite key. This is the project area, so future development, we can see within the pink line, that's the designated area of the project. Within a very short space, often bordering the site, we have important historical buildings, going from oldest to youngest, and we've looked at the characteristics of the area generally. So what types of furniture, the sort of mix of different bollard types and planters and street lighting, and then what all of this sort of looks like as a combination. Here we're looking specifically at, I suppose, unique elements within the site area, and we've looked at the trees. The existing historic tree closest to St. Mary's would have been the last of what was an avenue of trees linking towards Blessington House, and then the more recent additions trying to mirror that historic alignment. We have an oak tree, we have a maple, we also have some mulberry trees, and we have some cypress trees at the credit union building. There's a mix of different surface types. I'll run through them quickly. All of these combining together really to make a sort of patchwork of different materials that has to be considered in the design process. There are a number of manholes that we have called out, and this links to stormwater and how we drain the water from the site, becoming more important to consider in terms of climate change and increased rainfall. The area that's designated for cars versus the area designated for people, and then green spaces, non-accessible areas, private space within the overall zone, and this together coming to create a sort of patchwork of different use types, and breaking those down from pedestrian through to car, what is accessible, what is not, what is green. If we extend the area of the site, not that we're extending the site, but just to take cognizance of the other side of the N81, so an area that will influence the design, we can see that when you look at that, you're talking about around 54% of area designated to car versus 32 pedestrian. We can look here then at pedestrian flows and how many of those are sort of cut or have crossings, so you're moving through traffic at certain points, but then also how there's quite a few dead ends, so areas that end up, they have a route but they don't necessarily have a destination. The space given over to the square, so the gathering spaces, versus the footpaths, what we call here conductivity or connectivity. Looking here at the car flows, how they move through the site, the desired paths showing how people move across, the parking areas, including St. Mary's side of the N81, and the different designation of car parking spaces, so what they look like. We also have quite a lot of informal car parking at different spaces around the site. So when you take a breakdown of space, we'd say designated to people gathering versus parking spots, if we add up those and break them down as a percentage, you can see that there's around 60 or 58%, nearly 60% of the space given over to car parking versus the square gathering places. We have had a look at some suggested layouts from the community on how we might be able to facilitate some car parking while also increasing the space for pedestrians. While there are positive parts around creating more pedestrian zones, we see that some of those potential solutions are not exactly working. Just to do with the space when totally measured out. So another example there, where maybe we can get additional car parking spaces in, but you create issues with pedestrian flows, for example. So when we think about cars, it's generally an emotive issue, and it's obviously really important that people are able to use car mobility to get into towns where we don't have other alternatives. But every car parking space is also an opportunity for something else. So there is an opportunity cost within that. When we think of that 12.5 meters squared, there's lots of things we can do with that equivalent space. So we can have space for active travel, for people gathering, for play, for markets, for nature, for exercise, for yoga, for nature, for water, for growing, for water features or entertainment, for art, for exhibitions, for performance, and for murals. So all of these different things can happen within a public realm space. So thinking about the number of car parking spaces we have, that's 100 spaces for cars, or it's 100 opportunities for engaging, vibrant activity. We do have areas that have been highlighted to us as potential decamping zones for car parking. So there's an underground residential car park at the building that's bordering the long building bordering the curtilage of the site. And we know that at Tesco there are 2 floors of closed car parking, multi-story car parking. So there's easily the room within the area to be able to decant all of those spaces if we were to go that direction. We've looked at the different program, so everything from cafes to religious buildings to residential, also some vacant buildings. We've looked at what's active frontage and non-active frontage to try and understand where we can bring activity or vibrancy, the different land deeds and separation zones. We've looked at shadow, how that changes over the year, and from that being able to figure out the areas that are most advantageous and most likely to have people gathering within them. So the darker orange being the places that are lit most frequently, and the darker blue being the areas least lit. We have looked at different examples of good public realm design. So in this instance, where biodiversity or nature is really used to frame the public space, and then within that have activities between. We see where surface uniformity is used to create a wider sense of shared space, and how within that mix of furniture and nature, you can have a mobility of different forms as well. We have looked at examples where historic buildings have become the key elements in terms of driving a design, how they respond to inactive or active frontages, and how you can bring activity into squares, where you have a long park, a long public realm zone, how that can also be activated, bringing in biodiversity, water, seating. We've looked at Irish examples, of course, Clonakilty being a main one where they've really focused on the public realm as an opportunity to create vibrancy within the town. It is, I suppose, similar size to Blessington, so a good comparison. And you can really see here the potential for community space, for water, for biodiversity and history and community all together. Then we have Southbridge South Main Street in Bandon, a project recently completed, so you can see the planting still really to start taking root and grow properly, but in some of these photos becoming a bit more mature. So this is using sustainable urban drainage, using planting as a way to reduce the impact of water runoff. Roscommon Public Square, the impact of this, I suppose, is that idea again of collective surfacing, while also allowing traffic movement through the space. And if anybody knows Roscommon, this has made that area around those historic buildings much more vibrant. What we can see here then, a public covered pavilion. And in Athlone, some screenshots just of before and after recent public realm upgrades. So this is 2017, and what it looks like then again in 2025. From another angle, 2017, and what it looks like in 2025. So by bringing spaces that people can gather and spend time, you start to bring vibrancy into the town centres. And really, this whole project is around town centre first. How do we create that footfall? What does unsuccessful design look like? What we want to avoid. That's sometimes as important as what good design looks like. This is an example from Ballina, the town where our office is situated. And while it's great to get a public plaza like this, and there are lots of benefits, there are also missed opportunities. We can see that there's no activity in some of the units. There's no integration of services with manhole lids being exposed. There's no greenery, and there's no change of scale. Everything feels very grand and open, but not necessarily welcoming or human scale. And all of this relates in there not being a whole lot of footfall going through the space. So when we think about good design, we need to also think about the users. So what is a square for? It's for children, for families, for shoppers, for elders, for accessibility, for meeting, for relaxing, for playing, for connecting, working. And all of these things we need to consider together. And then trying to imagine things with a bit of a blue sky imagination. What could a place like this be? We could increase the car parking, add more and more. We could have places for people to gather and have a coffee, green spaces with increased footfall. We could have shared spaces with mobility moving through it. We could have space for markets, for sport, for events, for covering. We could imagine it all as a green park with spaces cut out for seating, for picnics, for play. we could imagine it as an urban forest. So all of these ideas are um, to get the creative juices flowing really, and to try and imagine what we could do here. Within a project like this, we're looking at best practice. So we have the design manual for urban roads and streets, which is really foundational in terms of how we create uh, good flows for traffic, but also safe spaces for people. So we're looking at the different surface treatments, how we can make spaces feel more like streets by integrating, how we can accommodate the sort of 30-kilometer speed limit as I suppose the mean between the arterial link and local roads, and how we can use surfacing to accommodate that 30-kilometer zone. Some examples here, how we can respond to radii, how we can include materials that might be different from the main public realm material, but showing still that it's different from your typical tarmac. So making surfaces feel like more slow traffic zones. How we can move and change the flow of traffic to slow it down. We've also looked at the requirements for buses and what needs to be included there, and what we call sustainable urban drainage, or SUDS. And this is linked to the idea of MBS, which is nature-based solutions, using nature really as an engineering tool. In this image here, showing how that has been used to slow the flow of water, how it can also be used, to slow the flow of water. So runoff water goes into these planted areas where, rather than going into stormwater, it's slowed down, and some evaporates and some is taken up by the plants. So it's a way of reducing pressure on stormwater systems, while also bringing biodiversity and nature into the city or town, making places feel more attractive and therefore valuable as well, increasing the value on properties. Again, just showing that diagram of how water can be collected and can infiltrate into the ground or evaporate, or be taken up by the plants. Another example here from Sheffield, and another example where community participation can become part of the public realm development. We have taken on board the proposals from the Town Centre First Plan, and developed those and expanded upon the ideas that were shown here. Looking at the workshop feedback, we've gathered various feedback from the different groups who participated in the first workshop, primarily looking at places for children to play, pop-up shops, a place for markets, the fact that there was no market, the need for different types of usage, the need for different upgrades to the monument. For example, there's a plan in place to bring electricity to that. The challenges around accessibility, wheelchairs, buggies struggling with current arrangements, the challenge with skateboarding with pedestrians and how we accommodate that, no commercial life in buildings after the evenings. So all of this gives us a sense of opportunities to improve the public realm. Called out here as wasted space, the zone within the credit union, potentially an opportunity there. Footpath being too narrow, the need for crossings again, a potential stage location, the need to widen the road, or widen the square, apologies. And all of this gives us a sort of rich tapestry of feedback that we can take into the proposals. I'm not going to dwell on these, but this is also specific challenges that have been highlighted across the various user groups within the public realm zone. So the ambition for the square in 2020 to be have green areas to promote local business, markets, to have a focal point in the town, an event space, shared space, safe space for people to congregate in the area, small events, craft markets, European style, not a car park, and a vibrant urban area, destination, attractive, pleasant space to live in, work, and visit. A country market opening up, um, benches for places where people would wait for the bus, reducing the speed limit down to 30k, have a continuity of street furniture and lighting. We've also had brief extracts, so the ambition to create a high quality focal point, a public realm space in the heart of the town to afford greater permeability to walkers and wheelers, improve the setting of key landmark buildings in the vicinity to support local businesses and the community, create a more attractive, people-friendly environment to improve pedestrian flows, for potential for businesses to incorporate outdoor seating, including provision of a shelter and electronic pop-up, to have events and market trading, town centre Wi-Fi to be smart, tree planting and rain gardens to ensure the town is resilient to climate change and biodiversity loss, to have bespoke, unique, integrated light features for attracting footfall and for night, and to have fixed seating to provide a space for people to gather. So how do we increase footfall, support local businesses, slow traffic, prioritise pedestrians, show off the historic buildings, remember the past, build in future resilience, provide green space, provide flexibility, create a variety of experiences, provide spaces to relax, escape, engage, and have fun, and to create a destination and instill community pride of place. We've a number of concepts that we have ran through to try and best meet those goals or targets. We've reduced those down to what we felt were the two most promising directions. Number one, we're calling the urban park. So this is the existing situation. And the idea of the urban park is to try and maximize the amount of green space, opportunities for sustainable urban drainage and biodiversity within the proposal. So if we imagine the blank canvas where we retain the trees, the historic pillars and the monument, that gives us an easier space to imagine what else might happen. We would propose to extend the square to include a zone to take in the verge along the road, so we have more space. And then if everything was green, how can we cut out what we need? So reinforcing the historic avenue as a memory of that important alignment, having the desired paths carved out, so where people are most likely to walk, having crossings at the N81, having a pocket urban forest, so a place to hide away or reprieve from the town when it's busy. Squares cut out, so where we have the potential market area, the space in front of the old market house, and closer up to the West Wicklow house as well. The road, more or less as it exists, two in, and then a one-way system a bit further north. And then to slow that down, to have a sort of traffic calming impact on it, to curve the street, which also frees up different spaces. Pedestrian crossings at the top, middle, and centre. We carve out a place for the bus, and we have flexible arrangement of squares, so it can include coffee tables, for example, nature paths through the urban woods, a formal gathering plaza with seating, a market flexible zone that could also host different types of events, potential for vehicles to access that, in particular to put up or put down different event elements, The idea to have a connected square to extend that for future events so that the whole space can act as one. Rain gardens, we just highlight one of potential many there, and supporting the commercial traders along the that larger building. What we call an activity program. So we're looking at multi-generational activity in this space. So it's the idea of not just having young people, but combining young and the really young and the elderly and everybody in between. So places that are welcoming so that everybody can gather collectively. We also have highlighted the potential for a future connection through through the credit union to have that as a more permeable space through the town. Looking at the proposal from a few different directions, again highlighting the main squares, so where we can have events or gathering, how that can be combined together, how we can provide place for nature in terms of wildflower in an urban forest, how we can have an informal square that can take on different uses, how we could have a new square linked to the credit union building, how we could have a commercial zone supporting local traders, and an activity space that brings in multi-generational interaction. The historic avenue being retained and enforced, reinforced pedestrian flows, how we sort of prioritize people moving through the space. And we also continue to provide access to cars while traffic calming with pedestrian crossings at key locations. The bus stop, as well as the historic memory of the tram being reflected within the design of that. We're taking in the design principles for best practice when looking at connections to the N81 and private access, in this case shown to be retained. We have a informal plaza where you can have coffees or different program to support the traders. You could have community events or potentially an overspill for parking, and then showing the plaza, what that could look like on different days with different events, even as a stage. So the view towards the old market house building, and then back towards what would be the market square area, and then from across the road into the plaza again, and then looking down from the Dunstores location up towards St. Mary's. What you can see here is that there has been a substantial increase in the amount of green space. So given over to nature, we have, instead of the current 3.5% up on 26%, we have a substantial increase in terms of the space for pedestrians from 36 up to 60%. And the impact here in terms of space for cars is that it's reduced substantially from around 50% down to 9%. The second option is what we call the archipelago. Again, starting from the same base point, extending, having two crossings in this instance, what we call the green program. So the trees that exist, preserving those and actually giving them a bit more space to breathe. Having a green anchor at either end, so we have one in the space beside St. Mary's Church, the existing tree, having a mirror anchor on the other side to replicate that. Some green buffers, zones to protect pedestrians and also to capture that flow of water. Pocket parks, areas to relax within the square and the actual squares themselves, the bus stop, places for coffee, for nature, for gathering, potential pavilion, the market square, supporting commercial program for the shops, and that idea of an activity zone again, or activity program, where we have multi-generational activities all in the same place. Also using those different elements as they're laid out to slow the flow of traffic as it would move through the public realm. Looking at the squares, the urban forest, the multi-generational interaction space, what we call the green islands, so pockets for nature, for sustainable urban drainage within the scheme, and then the urban activators, so where you have specific activities or program that are scattered really through the overall site. Pedestrian flows, how those connections are made, and how traffic would move through it and be calmed, with key raised crossings at the bottom, middle, and top of the scheme, a bus stop, with again reflection to the historic nature of the trams that once passed by the area. What it looks like towards the market house and towards the West Wicklow. What it looks like towards the lemon tree, and from Dunstores towards the St. Mary's Church. And then a breakdown here again of the areas, how we have improved space for green, for nature, improved pedestrian space again, even higher than the previous one, and again around 9% of the space then provided for car traffic. So this giving an overview of the different directions, the existing situation, the option 1, the urban park, where we're trying to maximize green space, and option 2, the archipelago, where we're trying to bring in diversity of different activities and layouts to create a sort of dynamic space as you would move through the public realm zone. That's everything from me. If you can now have a look at the survey that is accompanying this video and go through it, that would be brilliant for us to be able to get the community's feedback and understand how to take the next steps. Thank you.